So the only. So we did, audio knowledge. So let's say this. Let's say speaker. Form. Yeah, we can.
Is your volume? Maybe the volume long, so the Okay, good evening. It's 6:32. I'm going to call to order meeting number 1876 of the East Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission. We are located live in the East Windsor High School as well as on the Zoom platform. We have a full quorum. We have all 5 regular members of the commission.
Go ahead.
For added agenda items, we have one item. It is a correspondence from Robinson and Cole that was added to your packets, and we'll discuss that under correspondence. There is no new legal notice. So we are at the public participation portion of the meeting. This is for anyone who would like to speak on a topic that is not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone that would like to speak on a topic that is not on tonight's agenda? Yes, sir.
Okay, Stan Plesky, 354 Rye Street. And
Stan, because of the size of the crowd, please, could you come up to the microphone? We have
the town's website and how you do work on it has worked differently between Chrome and Edgeworth. It has not been a perfect candidate. I had spoke to a business owner of over 20 years who tried to get COVID money for sole proprietor. Could not get it because the website has been horrible. It is not intuitive to use. So if you're promoting small business, it doesn't work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stan.
Stan Plesky.
Is there anyone else? Is there anyone on the Zoom platform? I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Yes, ma'am. Excuse me?
Noise ordinance.
No, that was actually tried to put through by the Board of Selectmen, and I believe it was voted down.
Never passed.
It never passed. Correct. Yeah. Is there anyone on the Zoom platform that would like to speak on a topic that is not on tonight's agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. We are at approval of minutes. We have the minutes of our last regular meeting held on July 23rd. Does anyone have any edits or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
On line 372. The summary of the example of a carnival. And then it says, and fictional details. Is that intended because they were kind of potential details? It wasn't nothing specific, or is it functional details? It just isn't, if that may be the right word.
I think it was, my recollection was a hypothetical, so
Yeah.
it wasn't exactly any specific type, so.
Okay. Then I guess fictional works for that.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
All right, if nobody has anything else, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting held Tuesday, July 23rd, 2024 at 6:30 PM. It was meeting 1877 as presented.
There's a motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? One abstention. Okay. Under receipt of applications, we have no new applications, but we do have one application. Oh, okay. It is PZ 2024-13. It is for the owner applicant is East Windsor Investors LLC, is requesting a site plan modification at 225 South Main Street, map 2, block 23, lot 001-001 in the M1 zone. I propose if the commission would agree that we take this application out of order, hear this prior to the public hearing.
I agree.
So then could somebody please make a motion for that?
I'll make a motion that we take the new business application PZ 2024-13, East Windsor Investments LLC, request for a site plan modification at 225 South Main Street. Next on the agenda.
There's a motion to go out of order under the agenda. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. It's unanimous. So we will then go to new business is PZ 2023-13. The owner applicant is East Windsor Investors LLC, is requesting a site plan modification at 225 South Main Street, map 22, block 23, lot 001-001 in the M1 zone. Who is here to speak on this application?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Thank you, Attorney Carl Andalina, representing the applicant, East Windsor Investors LLC. We certainly appreciate, you letting us go ahead of other business that we have tonight. And thanks for allowing us to do that. I'm going to be extremely brief. I know there's a lot of people who want to speak on another application. So this is an application you're well aware of. It was approved for self-storage facility. It was approved at the end of 2023. This is an application to modify the site plan component. We were here a few months ago asking for a number of things. And you been denied that amendment. We've since gone back to the drawing board, so to speak. And our application is simply put as asking for 5 modifications to the existing site plan. 2 of them are related to components that were originally shown and approved back in the end of last year. 3 are sort of new components. In terms of the 2 components that were part of last year's approval, we're asking to modify the phasing. We'd like to change phases 2 and 3, or phases 2 and 3 to be 4 and 5, and for 4 and 5 to now be 2 and 3. So there are 4 existing buildings which are in various phases of construction. Phases 2 and 3, the new 2 and 3 will be 2 additional buildings located between the existing 4 buildings and Route 5. So it'll be to the front of the property, and then phases 4 and 5 will be to the rear of the existing 4 buildings on the property. In anticipation of the 2 new buildings being to the front, we'd like to keep the driveway, which is off of Route 5 to the existing residential structure, is there to use as a construction entrance. The reason for that is, as you're well aware, there's sort of a softer, pervious pavement on the ground, and moving equipment over that from the construction entrance, having road across that pavement would be somewhat injurious to that pavement. So we'd like to use the existing driveway, for phases 2 and 3. When phase 3 is completed, we will remove that building and turn it into lawn area. Last time we were here, we talked about keeping the house. We have no intention of doing that. We talked about removing some trees off of Abbey Road in that corner. We're gonna put those trees in. So the 3 other things we're asking for, which are new, is the fence, which is going to be comprised of a 5-foot solid vinyl fence, most of which is already in place, as you're aware. And then we're gonna join that with a 5-foot vinyl equestrian fence. I assume it'll be a 4-rail fence at that height, 5 feet of probably 4 rails high, instead of the 3 that you might see typically around. And so we're asking for that. We're also asking for a gate, which will be an electronic gate across the entrance from Abbey Road. Anyone who rents a space there will have the access code to get in and out of the gate. And obviously the town will have that access code as well in the event of emergency, fire, what have you. And the only other thing is we'd like to install bollards at the corner to the building. That'll protect the buildings from damage from people loading and unloading and driving their vehicles around the site. So that's pretty much it. I have nothing further unless you have any questions of us, which we'd be happy to answer. But with that, our presentation is complete.
Jim, you have any questions?
Yeah, no office, right?
No, there will be no office. The residential structure has to come down before we get our COs for the first floor building.
So
That should be soon.
the applicant didn't want to put an office in it all or a bathroom?
Not at this point, no, so we decided just to tear it down so we can get open and running.
Okay. So I have.
Ann,
No
no
question.
question? Dave?
Sorry.
Stacy?
Existing driveway, this is basically just number 5. So you'd like to use this existing driveway from South Main Street as a construction entrance?
Right, for the next 2 buildings, which will be on that side of the property.
Okay, is this a paved driveway, Karen?
I believe it is, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, along those same lines, your equestrian fence is gonna run across that area, so to use it as a construction entrance, do you plan to remove the fence at the time of that, or are you gonna install a gate there, or how are you gonna?
I think we'll probably just we will leave the fence off of that area until we're done using it, so it'll probably maybe 1 or 2 sections.
So you plan to move into that next phase immediately? or-
That'll be, once most of the spaces in the first floor buildings are rented, the plan will be to move into phases 2 and 3, correct?
Okay, and then once phases 2 and 3 are complete, is that driveway gonna be removed?
The driveway will be removed, it will be turned into lawn, and we'll connect the gap in the fence.
Does staff have any questions?
So you basically start from the back and working your way forward.
We started in the middle, so we go forward and then to the back. Right? Yeah.
Does anyone else have any other questions? No?
No, good.
Okay,
Thank you.
so. Nobody has anything else, right? We have a draft motion for this.
Would you like?
I'd like to
motion?
entertain a motion, yes. please.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the modification to PZ 2023-21 for a special use permit with site plan construction of a self-storage facility in 10 buildings to be constructed in 5 phases. The applicant has modified the original approval dated October 10, 2023. The modification includes installation of a perimeter fence, a security gate, and several bollards. The application, upon approval, will serve to close the notice of violation issued on June 24th, 2024. Motion references a set of plans dated 8/3/23. And contains 16 conditions, all of which are in a memo to the Planning and Zoning Commission dated 8/13/2024.
There's a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none?
Could I just
Yes.
underscore that the plans were last revised on July 24th, 2024?
That is included in the motion that the revision date of the plans is 7/24/24. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you
have
very
approval. Okay, so returning back to our regular agenda, we have nothing under performance bonds or action permits extensions. So we will then move on to the continued public hearing. It's PZ 2024-10. Town of East Windsor is requesting a text amendment to zoning regulation sections 201.1 definitions, 305.3 farm regulations, 403 and 507.4 permitted accessory uses and warehouse point, 404 permitted accessory uses, 405 temporary permit seasonal events, 503.3 temporary seasonal outdoor dining, and 601.5 automotive uses. So before we begin the public hearing, I believe there's probably some people here that maybe never attended one previously. So I'm gonna kind of read you a little definition of how a public hearing is conducted. So a public hearing will begin with a presentation made by the applicant and or their agents. The applicant may refer to materials submitted with their application or bring materials to the meeting to refer to specifically. During the applicant's presentation, the chair may recognize other commissioners or town staff to ask questions of the applicant, but no member of the public are permitted to speak. Following the conclusion of the applicant's presentation and any further questions or discussion by the commission or staff, the chair will open the hearing to members of the public. Any members of the public who wish to address the commission regarding the application will be provided with the opportunity to do so. Speakers must be recognized by the chair and will be requested to come forward and speak directly to the PZC at the lectern in the front of the room and to provide their full name for the record. During this portion of the public hearing, speakers must address the commission directly, as a dialogue with either the applicant or the other commissioners is not permitted. At the discretion of the chair, the applicant may be requested to respond to specific questions raised by members of the public if he or she thinks that doing so will explain and expand the hearing procedure. Otherwise, all questions will be answered by the applicant following the conclusion of the public comment portion of the hearing. Speakers may present their own information as they are permitted to provide paper copies of their comments or any other supporting information to the commission, which will then be made part of the official record for the application. Members of the public may also submit written comments regarding the application to the Planning and Development Office, which will be provided to the commission for review and made part of the official record for the application. The chair will provide an opportunity for any member of the public wishing to speak to do so at his or her discretion. The chair may limit the time allowed of all public comments equally, except that he or she may grant additional time to a speaker recognized as a spokesperson for members of the audience or other agencies employed by citizens presented evidence in support or opposition to the application. The chair may further limit the communication of any speaker on the grounds that they are beyond the scope of the hearing, repetitious or previous testimony, or not otherwise germane to the subject of the public hearing. All speakers are entitled to the courtesy to process without interruption, and the chair will enforce the courtesy if necessary. While the commission is required to take the comments made by the public into consideration, they are not required to vote in accordance with the majority of the speakers in favor or against an application. Okay. So we will begin with a review of the changes.
Following along. Just following you. Yep.
Thank you all for coming. As you know, this hearing has started, opened on July 8th, and we received some comments during that meeting. We got feedback, made some additional changes to the text that we saw at the last meeting, so I wanted to just give a little background of why we made the changes that we did.
Closer.
Pull the microphone.
Mike closer.
Here's the light. I got the mic now, watch out. Okay, so I want to give a backgrounder on why we made the changes that we made. And Danielle, will you stand up for a second? And most of you met her on the way in, but Danielle is the assistant town planner, wetlands agent, zoning enforcement officer. And she did the lion's share of the work of drafting these amendments. And I'll tell you that they came from a place of finding things that didn't quite work in the regulations, or put things in the regulations, saying, I wanna fix this, we need a definition for that. That piled up over probably a 2-year time span. And so now let's do a sweep of our legs and try and fix something. The first item that I wanted to talk about was the new section for. Into the mic, please. It's hard to hear. Okay, thank you. So the first section I want to talk about is the chicken section, and Danielle worked with the Agricultural Commission to devise the section that needs to be. Do you want to speak directly to it? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Sure, I'll give you the mic. All right.
Hi, everybody. So these chicken regulations that I know are a bit of a bone of contention right now, they came about a year ago when I started getting phone calls from residents who wanted to have a few chickens, residential properties for their kids to have pets or to just have eggs for themselves. I think at the time, eggs were $5, $6 a dozen. They were ridiculous. And at that same time, I was also approached by the Agricultural Commission who had the same idea. We think we could go over the chicken regulations for chickens and maybe make it a little bit easier for the residents of the town to have them. So that's been the intention from the beginning, was to make things easier. The regulations as they stand right now that are in effect and have been since 2014 have chickens lumped in with all other livestock. So it didn't really make sense. There wasn't an opportunity for someone to have 2 to 3 chickens because, for instance, it said you needed 150-foot minimum from any abutting dwelling. You need 150-foot minimum from a wetland or water course, which is non-negotiable. We don't make that rule. It said you need 100 feet from any side or rear property line to have a chicken coop or a chicken holding area, which again, smaller parcels are not able to do that. It also said you needed a minimum of 1 acre of pasturable land, which means subtract your buildings on there, subtract any pavement, any impervious areas, and what you have left needs to be a minimum of 1 acre. That's on the books right now. So what we did was, first of all, extract chickens from being lumped in with all other livestock, and then the changes we made were for people to have only 25 feet from any street line. For no higher, it's still 75 feet from any well, 25 feet from any abutting dwelling, which is 75 foot less. Oh no, I'm sorry, 125 less. And we have 10 feet from any other property line. That gives so many people more opportunity to have chickens. And I know people think we had added a bunch of rules about coops, but right now in the regulations for all livestock, which maybe makes sense if you're gonna have a cow or a horse, you have to have a full diagram, it's gotta be printed from the town GIS, it's gotta have topography, you need to show any kind of slopes in excess of 15%, all wetlands and water courses, and narrative. Again, it doesn't seem like something that should happen for someone who wants to have a couple chickens in their yard. So we tried to whittle that down a little bit. You need a basic plot plan. We just want to see that you're following these regulations. It's 10 feet from your property line. You know, it's 25 feet from an abutting dwelling. And we just kind of sign off on it. Great, wonderful. And we'll want to come see when you got your chicken coop finished, that it's enclosed. Because that's part of the regulations, which again is already part of the current regulations. So we weren't trying to make this any more difficult for people. We're trying to make it easier for people. And I'm sorry that there was some kind of miscommunication and people thought that it was otherwise. That's literally the intention here. So that's all I have for chicken. I will give this back to
So the next set of changes had to do with, parking for larger commercial vehicles, like semis. And, so I put down on here, as well as commercial vehicles. Section 404B requires that all vehicles be registered. And we restated that in 404L1. Section 404L3 doesn't allow for parking of large commercial vehicles at all. So we've added, alternative storage requirements. And, allowed for a 12-hour parking period. I know that Danielle has gotten calls from folks that she has sent out regulatory, reminders or NOVs about not being allowed to park their trailers there and, or the cabs at least. And has heard back that folks, you know, they're on shift work or they're coming home for lunch and taking a nap. And so we added this 12-hour parking, to accommodate those types of situations. And, last meeting, we talked about construction equipment storage on residential properties. And there was a conversation of, you know, personal use. And so we've made some additional changes, in a response to that, to allow for the storage of non-commercial construction equipment, within an approved structure or in the rear of the property screened from view. Recreational vehicles. So there are a few problems on this one where, no storage in the front yard. We've now changed that to not within 30 feet of the property boundary. And that's, a change we made from comments received at the last meeting. Previously, we had a 5-day parking period for loading and unloading trailers. We took that off because now the 30-foot setback, so it doesn't fit anymore. And then the new portion that we had put in, the first draft of these changes was extenuating circumstances. The current regulations didn't allow for any, and we've had some situations where folks had the need to have a trailer. They had either somebody sick in the home and they came from, you know, a far distance and had nowhere to park and needed to be there to care for a family member. So we added a section in there for the ZDO to be able to give a temporary permit for extenuating circumstances. So you have flooding seasonally, or like I said, some hazard that would make sense to allow someone to stay in the trailer or park. Okay. So temporary events, I know this, is a triggering word for some folks that, have some residual fear. But what we really were trying to do is improve the regulations with, the folks who come to us looking to have temporary events, maybe seasonally, 4 times a year. And our regulation said 2 times a year, so we changed that, proposing to change that to 4. And we never had a definition of what a temporary event was, so we added one to the regulations. We received comments on that particular item, and in response to that, we put some more defined triggering for having a public hearing for applications that come in for a temporary event. We maintained at the discretion of the ZDO, because she can judge whether something is, you know, over the top of what she wants to approve. And so there's that first one. The 2 we added were anything that has an amplified performance. And the second one was events that were going to run a duration of greater than 3 days. Then we just had that miscellaneous cleanup. A lot of terms reduced in the regulations that we had no definitions for. We've added those, we're proposing to add those up front. We wanted to bring in the zoning regs in alignment with the building code. Zoning had an 8-foot. Any height, any sentence below 8 feet wouldn't need a zoning permit. However, building, their is 7, so we proposing to put us as that. Somebody calls and they get an answer from zoning and it doesn't die, they put it, we come up fix that. And then we had, and the commission approved having food trucks and outdoor dining. As well, it's not just at restaurant, you know, we had outdoor dining at restaurants that we wanted to put in for commercial uses. Problem solved brewery comes to mind, right, that you can have a food truck to service outdoor dining. So, we did approve that previously, it just didn't get put into the revision of the reg, so we're doing that now. That's a brief summary. We can go through, if necessary, the document itself with the summary table. Through the page.
Okay. Does anyone on the commission have anything that they saw in these revisions that they'd like to further clarify? Yes, Jim.
Yes, we're talking about 30 feet off the property line. You can have your camper, you can have your boat, you can have whatever you want in your front yard as long as you're 30 feet off of the property line.
That's where we landed. The conversation at the last meeting and having issues with line of sight. And I
Yep.
felt like adequate.
So if somebody bought a, $40,000 camper, they can park it in their front yard. Which is good. I'm for that. Okay. Commercial vehicles coming home. Where do we land on that?
Had commercial vehicles, correct me if I'm right, because I know there's one section that we didn't write, I think.
This is L2s where,
Yeah,
I just don't remember if that's in the rear of the property, in an approved structure.
yeah, just as strictly in an approved structure. No, that was under the non-commercial, construction equipment. The commercial vehicles is just, currently it's written as one commercial vehicle with or without commercial markings unless stored in an approved structure.
which means the garage or,
Okay.
So
yeah,
I guess the concern I have somewhat is when it says without commercial markings. sometimes businesses may register their personal vehicles under the business as a company vehicle, strictly used for conveyance, not for the conduction of the business. Maybe more just to go out, look at jobs and quote things and things like that. I mean, how does that really affect us as it being a commercial vehicle?
Yeah, here.
If it's a vehicle that looks like any other vehicle, I don't. Actually, no.
No, they don't have to have a commercial plate.
We're not gonna have a dialogue with the audience right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I'm sorry. We're not having a dialogue right now. We'll have a discussion under public participation. Okay, hand me the microphone, thank you. Is that better? Okay. All right, so that was one area that I don't know if we need a little better definition. If the intent is large commercial vehicles, then do we talk about GVW or anything like that?
Well, we did have a capacity, right? We had the 2 ton.
Yeah, but it does not quote define itself as well as GVW. GVW was put on it by the manufacturer, undisputable. So, I mean, if the intent is to prevent large commercial vehicles from being parked in residential neighborhoods, do we go with the number that the DOT goes by, 26,000 pounds, you need a commercial driver's license? That's a big commercial vehicle. And, now it's no longer a personal conveyance type thing.
We've had those conversations in the office, and we kind of landed at the tractor trailer. So, I mean, sure, we can revisit.
That makes it cut and dry. 26,000 pounds over, it's a large commercial vehicle.
Right now, the regulations as they stand right now, say only one commercial vehicle.
Danielle,
I'm sorry.
yeah, then, we would like to. I'm sorry, I was speaking directly to Danielle and asking her to come up to the mic and speak.
Or I can,
As the regulations state now already, there are only allowed 1 commercial vehicle per resident. And I believe there is a capacity. To them. So that's certainly something we can look at as to if we want to alter the size or alter the definition of DOT of large vehicle, I mean,
Well,
absolutely, but.
what issues are you seeing out there? Are they the big commercial vehicles or are pickup trucks and vans?
The issues we're seeing there, which I think we addressed with semi-tractor trailers, or the semi-tractor trailer tag, and those are the calls that we get about my neighbor has a, tractor trailer on the driveway. I'm not getting calls about, an F-150 that has Joe's plumbing service on the side or anything like that, so maybe this is something we should kind of define a little bit more, but as I said, as it stands, as of now, the regulations say 1 commercial vehicle.
So I think the whole idea about that is that people don't run a business out of their house and they have 4 or 5 employees coming up with 4 or 5 vans. That's the whole intent why that regulation was written. But if you get in a smaller neighborhood, it's okay if a guy's got a yard way in the back, you don't see anything. But if you're in a little residential neighborhood and the guy's bringing 4 guys in and 4 vans every morning at 7 o'clock and making a racket, that was that whole intent for that 1 commercial vehicle.
As the 1 commercial vehicle requirement has been in the zoning regulations, starting from the original zoning ordinance in 1952.
So we know there's a lot of that going on in East Windsor and everybody kind of turns a blind eye to it. There's tons of people in business in town that do that. And I'm okay with that, but we need to put something on the books just in case somebody gets out of control and you got neighbors against neighbors. That's what we're trying to avoid. We're not trying to shut anybody out of business, that's for sure.
Any other thoughts? I mean,
I think trying to find a reasonable way that people can live on their property yet not disrupt the neighborhood is the goal. And, when I think, again, not being a person who knows fleets or commercial vehicles, I think a sedan that somebody uses to pick up Quest Lab samples or something, I don't really consider a commercial vehicle. It's a company car. So I do think there is a distinction in size and type. And when you get into huge vehicles, dump trucks, parked in residences, I think that starts the clanging in the backup alarms and all that, which will cause a problem between neighbors. So I agree with what our chairman is saying, that our aim is really the big stuff, not what could be a transportation vehicle that just happens to be owned by a company.
Maybe Stacy.
Just on record that I agree with the chairman and the people.
So. So are we looking, do we wanna put a GVW number in there, or how do we wanna address this? So really it's to take care of the
Yeah,
law.
we could do that, workshop type.
Okay. The other one that I skipped over is, L1. All vehicles on the premises must be registered unless stored in an approved structure. I propose we also include, like we did with the non-commercial construction equipment, that it's in the rear of the property, screened from view. So again, that'll help the guy who's trying to restore an old car and, needs to have a parts car. As long as it's in the back of the property, out of screen from view, have at it. Does the commission agree with that one also, or do you have any other objection? No.
I guess my concern with the parts car is how many? What's the difference between a junkyard and a parts car? And when you have 25 of them in your backyard, I think you're, at risk of fluids leaking into the ground and causing a problem. I think if you've got one or two that you're working on and it's not in view, I don't see an issue.
I don't think that's a good idea because you can't tell people what to do in their backyard. They're not gonna be happy with that.
So you're in agreement that as long as it's in the back, screened from view?
Yep.
And to your point, if it does become an issue of leaking fluid, now it's a DEP issue. They can deal with that also, if people are polluting, contaminating, things like that. And then, I think once you get to that point, screening may become quite an issue too, if you had to try to screen 25 vehicles. But I'd rather not try to write a regulation for that one possible that hasn't happened yet. And
I also think we'll never know about it in the backyard. It's screened and the neighbors aren't seeing it.
okay, those were the two items that I saw in the proposals that I wanted a little clarification on. Does anyone have anything else that they want to comment on or would like to see a modification to?
No, those were hot ones, big ones.
Okay, so now I'm gonna open this up to the public. We have 14 people who signed up. So I'm thinking, let's try 3 minutes. Because that'll put us at an hour for all 14 people to speak. So let's go with 3 minutes, and again, if I feel you haven't gotten your point across in 3 minutes, I can grant an extension. Is there anyone in the audience who has not signed up to speak that would like to speak? So please add your name to the list. And I truly,
Give it
I'd
another-
like to ask that if somebody's already brought up your point, we don't need to hear 14 people say the same thing over again. If you'd like to go on record, you can say, I agree with what's been said and leave it at that. But I really don't think that just hearing 14, 15, 16 people say the same thing over and over again is gonna add a lot of value.
There is it.
Next page. Okay, so when I call you, please come up to the podium, state your name and tell us what you think. First one I have is Scott Bowman. Please, sir, if you follow the procedure. Okay, need to go. Rosemary Raber.
My name is Rosemary Raber. I'm at 241 Scantic Road, East Windsor. My question is, first of all, I'm sitting here listening to our zoning enforcement officer. I do think you guys are, this is the first time I've been here, you guys done a nice job. I do agree that chickens and all this stuff, what's in their backyard is fine, but you have to also keep your neighbors happy, keeping it clean, keeping it so far away from the property line. Why I am here is, what do you consider an unreasonable amount of cars that somebody might have in their backyard? Another thing is, what do you consider grandfathered? If somebody has a business, you know, and how many years is that considered that you're grandfathered? Another thing, if you had animals in the past, I assume that you now follow the same regulations that we saw on the board today, following zoning enforcement, giving a plan of a building you're gonna do and such, right? Yes. Another thing is, not far from my house, we have people, what are the regulations as far as people living in, trailers year round? We're talking about, they're there, and I don't know how come people don't see them. What are the rules as far as calling? Do you have to give your name, number, whatever to make a complaint? And as far as the unregistered motor vehicles, if you can see them from the road, are they something that the zoning enforcement officer will come out and take care of? And do you have to put it in writing? And those are my questions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Robert Lynn. I'm sorry, Mike.
Bob Light, Rice Street in Broadbrook. I want to thank the commission and especially the staff. What a job this is. I was trying to review it so I could speak intelligently on a couple of things that were on my mind. And a lot of work that's been done. In thanking you, I also want to say, what a shame that you got vacancies. It's a thankless, painless job, and it's a shame that people, if it were a good job, and it didn't have any considerations for circumstances that got people fighting against each other and fighting against you as a commission, and now too, with the people standing in line looking for your job. Anyway, one of the first questions I've got is, I have a small lot, it's on Rye Street, and it's a parallelogram. And I don't have a garage, and by the way that it's laid out, I would have to get an appeal. In order to build a garage there. I wanna do some major work on my home. And, whether to go to a hotel or stay with my soulmate up in Southwick every night. When the walls start coming down, and the windows and the doors are coming out. I thought about putting a motorhome in there. Would that be, and I can't set it 30 feet back from my lot line, from the road side either. Would that be considered a hardship? I'd have to get something, from the zoning board of appeal. Just a thought. The other thing is, I have a neighbor 2 doors down, there's chickens and a rooster. And the rooster crows, not just to wake anybody up in the morning. And my soulmate, who's visited from Southwick, said, how can you stand that? Your neighbor had to get rid of the chickens, because they didn't have enough property. How can you stand the rooster? I can stand it. My answer to that is, makes me feel like I'm still part of this progressive rural community. Development, got a lot of time on the Economic Development Commission, pro-business. And I hate to think that any of these, new text amendments would stop people from wanting to move into town, park a couple of plumbing pickup trucks or box trucks at their home or something like that. The other thing is, the amendment for cleaning up the property. Haven't we been through this? Haven't we voted on that at some time?
It's not part of this.
Oh, okay, okay. And as far as the events, pretty sure we have been through that very, very thoroughly. I think we've had hearings on it, and I think there was a vote on it regarding the Scannick Museum area. So I'd just be interested in how that stands and how it fits into these new text amendments. Thank you.
Clinton Williams.
I think it's Clinton Williams, go on 2 Cobblestone Drive in Robert. And I pretty much touched base on everything that was gonna comment about tonight. About commercial vehicles, and the other thing about the cars in the garage. I know a lot of folks that when they COVID, they have a project cars they're working on, they would have. They need extra money to fix this thing up, they're ready. Well, I'm going to drive for a couple of years yet. So to make that clear, you can have an emergency car in the garage, am I right? And that's it. Okay. Thank you very much.
Paul Anderson.
Okay, so I came here tonight. Well, prior to coming here tonight, gee, I thought I had some complaints. Like, gee, there was no legal notice for the continued public hearing, and then I did my research and said, you don't need one. Not a problem. My next thing was gonna be, why are we at the high school auditorium? It's not very convenient compared to the town hall, but then we're voting, and the Broadbrook School has construction going on. So that took that one out. Not a problem. It had some other things, but, some things are getting resolved, but I do have some, concerns about cars at a residence. Registered, fine. apparently it doesn't matter if you have 100 cars, as long as they're all registered. And you can fit them on your property, which, whatever. But unregistered vehicles, and I assume that means parts as well, parts of cars, I don't see that specifically. But I do know that if somebody's driving down a road and they see an unattached fender in somebody's yard, may have to call an ambulance because they'll have a heart attack. It's such a serious issue. I'm making fun of it because I think it's somewhat nonsensical. Cars for parts still look like cars, registered or not. It can be a car. It doesn't have to be something that is unsightly. It can be a car. Maybe what you need is some internal parts like seats. Nobody would even know. I think we're being very restrictive. Saying that these things have to be in a quote, an approved structure, which I assume means something you already have. Although, well, any approved structure that would house a vehicle will probably be acceptable. But putting them in the backyard and screening them, screening may be a non-issue, depends on how much yard you have. But I do know that there have been complaints and quote violations of people having vehicles virtually in the woods and being complained about for someone who moved into town and decided afterwards they don't like somebody's backyard. And to me, that's nonsense. If you choose to move into town, you can see what exists around you before you purchase or rent or whatever. And whatever's there is what's going to be there. You don't have a reasonable case, in my opinion, for complaining that, oh, look, I can see cars over here. Yeah, but they were there when you got here. It was the old story. If you want to build a house next to a pig farm and you don't like the smell of pigs, why is it the farmer's problem when you're the one who built the house there? That was not a good idea.
You're at 4 minutes now, sir.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to be that long. All right, let me skip on to commercial vehicles real fast. Okay. Saying commercial vehicles is a scary thought, because anything registered commercial is commercial, period. Your idea of going by gross vehicle weight is a very good idea. So I don't know what else I can say about it, so maybe I'll talk later. Thank you.
Yeah. You know you're next, Wayne?
Yes,
sir.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm Wayne Sherry. I live on Depot Street in Broadway. Just want to touch on a few things. I had to pause a lot out, so bear with me. You already know what it is. Okay, the fence being 8 feet high, putting that into a zoning regulation, what would that prove? I mean, you want to combine it with another regulation.
It's already in the regulation. We're just making it match what the building department is having.
That's another one. Chickens. The lot size, well, a lot of people have homes that have been here for 150 plus years old, and they don't have any backyard or side yard to speak of, so what you're doing is you're restricting them from having chickens. And I don't think that's fair to the people. Wetlands, okay, you want 150 feet from wetlands?
That's not our requirement, that's a requirement of the Board of Health,
I
a
don't
wetlands commission. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What?
It's a requirement of the wetlands commission,
Not us.
not us.
The wetlands commission.
So
Okay.
this is state, that's what's
Oh.
across the board.
The state wetlands board,
And
Well,
how many-
what's considered wetlands? I believe it's considered by vegetation, it grows there.
It's how, it's alluvial or floodplain soil.
and it's designated on the GIS map, and
Right. So it's vegetation that's there basically, that's how they determine it. Yes,
Oh, soil.
I had to go through
Yeah.
this, with soil scientists more than once.
Yeah.
So that limits a lot of things too. My backyard is all in wetlands. Even though it's not wetlands, because it's been changed and updated. So that puts me out of the chicken farm. That's not fair.
that's, again, that's the state requirement, not ours. The wetlands is a state requirement.
State requirement, okay, scratch another one then.
Okay.
Okay, here's one that I know I can talk on. Vehicles. They must be registered or stored. We already kind of went through that thing, but you know what? Motor vehicles will let you have as many cars as you want to register. And there's no problem with that. So I can fill my backyard up, but some people can't. Some people don't even have room to park their cars. They have to park on the street. And then park their cars with the kid on the side, so that, you know, you don't give a definition of a motor vehicle. You just say vehicles must be registered. Now, a vehicle, I believe, includes tractors, mini bikes,
Whatever the DOT determines is street legal to drive.
yeah, tractors, lawnmowers, the whole nine yards.
Lawnmowers do not qualify as a
Yes.
DOT vehicle.
Yes, if it goes down the road, has a motor, it's a motor vehicle. You don't define that, I think you should define that. You want, let's see, what do we have? You went over more than one commercial vehicle. Think you know that too, so I can scratch that out. Let's see, sale of motor vehicles. 2 a year. Sell a car in the yard, you can have 2 a year.
That's existing.
I think
Yeah, that's the existing, we weren't changing that at all.
That's already there?
Yes,
It's hard to follow when people did, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
it's red, the stuff that's in red, the things we changed.
Okay, no, didn't. Let's see.
And you, sir, are at 4 minutes now also. So,
Sorry.
if you have more points,
Yeah, the recreational vehicles, now you're talking about anything that basically isn't a car, the way I see it. Your definition includes trailers and all that also?
campers, boats, and RVs,
I have a car
motor.
trailer that's registered, they're all registered as campers. So that means I can't put the camper no closer than 30 feet from my boundary in the front. Correct?
before it wasn't allowed at all.
And as the regulation reads now, you can't park it in the front at all. We're trying to make it that you'll have ability to park it 35 feet off.
The driveway is a U shape and it's less than 30 feet. So that makes it tough for me, okay? And it has to be 10 feet from the sideline. Again, that's, you know, that's not.
That's existing also.
Okay, let me just sum it up here, okay? As of 2020, there's 11,900 people in East Windsor. And I don't think that all these people are in agreement with what you're trying to pass here. This is a right to farm town. And, I just think that we don't compare ourselves to Westport, Greenwich, or Fairfield. And, I guess I'll wrap it up right here because I'm running out of time. Thank you.
permit going?
Was on the, section that was removed, it said that, zoning enforcement officer approval was required. The application was, it said a special event, and it seems like, you know, it is, it's highlighted, where it says, but no event that includes the amplified comments.
Speaking of Mike, yeah.
About that, when you said, the,
If you're speaking about section 405A, the stuff that is highlighted in red is new addition. The only thing that is stricken there, there's something lined out.
yeah, so that section was all, it was dotted lines over it says deleted.
Yeah, when it talked about the zoning enforcement officer has the discretion to request, so rather than giving it just as discretion, we're correcting it to that if it meets any of those other requirements, the amplified music, it's automatic. It's not at the discretion anymore.
Okay, and then does that include, indoor amplified events also, or just outdoor?
For an indoor event, it'd have to be in a venue that's approved to hold indoor events.
I'm just concerned what could be possibly be built across the street from me after going through the journeys with the, East Windsor Historical Society. The guy has open land across the street from me that is, mostly not, we used to be talking on the ministry, and now it's farmed like a year, and I'm just concerned what can be built there. So if they want to build an event facility like the East Windsor Historical Society wanted to build, or renovate,
Depending on what your zoning is, I don't know if it's even allowed as a special, if you're in a residential area, it most likely wouldn't even be allowed, or maybe as a special use permit, but that would again require a public hearing, the whole application process.
okay, that's good to hear. Right, and then, the other question I have, when you're talking about defining commercial vehicles, this is a touchy subject for me, because I don't like to write on it. I have a traumatic brain injury, which gives me severe living disorder. I sleep during the day. I live next door to a business, which for many years kept me up, all day long. They were importing dogs to have multiple people come over, chainsawing, pallets put them in the backyard. There was, trailers being loaded. They had, sheet metal, decking on them, equipment being thrown onto the decking. I was up every single morning. I thought when my fiance retired, from his 4:30 a.m. wake ups, I could, have decent sleep. I went to you guys, I went to the first selectman, and everyone said to me, there's nothing you can do because it's a noise, ordinance that they're not, violating. It's a home business. They can do anything they want in a home business. And I got perturbed and had still, sleep problems. Many days I had severe sleep deprivation. I don't feel I should be knocking on people's doors all the time. They keep it down over there. I'm not that kind of person. I just deal with it myself. But I think when you talk about the commercial vehicles, if you include trailers, work trailers, not just the vehicle itself. And just because a vehicle looks like somebody else's pickup truck, doesn't mean that it's not going to include noise with the use of the pickup truck in a commercial application. That's what concerns me most, is the noise that can be made with the commercial vehicle, not so much, whether it's pretty when I look out the window or not, I could care less. They could park a much larger truck there if they're quiet, I could care less. It's the noise associated with it being a commercial use vehicle. So not so much the looks or the weight or anything like that, but the usages that go around that being a commercial vehicle that concern me.
Okay. We have a request to take a 10-minute break. May I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion for a
10-minute,
5-minute recess.
5-minute recess. We have a motion for a 5-minute recess. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We will recess for 5 minutes.
Tea break.
Yeah. Is it possible to find out where I am?
Sure.
Just Gary. Very much, Mike. Our recess is over, we're gonna resume the meeting. Okay, next up is Stan Pleski.
He was sitting right there. Stan, going once,
Scratch the name off.
Stan. Stan Plesky, he was sitting there.
Here he comes. You're up, Stan.
All right, good evening, and thank you to the board for your service. Stan Plesky. Let's see, first one, some clarification, that might be something you might want to look at, commercial vehicles. At least when I went to planometrics and all the other town planning meetings, that one of the things they did find is there was no economic development committee. There's a board, there's no committee, made up of people from the towns and other state board officers and what have you. I find it a little disheartening, seeing that I spent probably 10 years going back and forth with planometrics. You're always allowed to have a business, sole proprietor with family members arriving. Well, now with commercial vehicles, you can have, and you're only supposed to have one commercial vehicle. So what if dad, and there's a couple instances, dad had his vehicle for the same business, and his son has the same business for his vehicle, and they live under the same house. Also too, what if you had, say, dad works for one contractor, heating, kid's an electrician, that's another contractor. How about mom works for somebody else? Just one of those things. I'm gonna turn around, I'll hit real quick on chickens. East Hartford has chickens. You can pretty much put them on a postage stamp in East Hartford. Let's see, we're gonna go back to, and then looking at non-conforming RVs 30 feet off. Am I correct? For Bob, there was the zoning enforcement officer, I think at that point, can, or maybe the zoning board of appeals could offer a special use permit to be able to drop that vehicle in for special items. Okay, now on the cars, unregistered. So if I buy a kit car, it shows up in a tractor trailer, it may be in a box, but it's still unregistered. So, and that was something I brought up back to Warren many years ago when we talked about that, and that's what he had originally said, one unregistered vehicle per property. And you could stack inside your building as many as you want. So that's about what I got to say. Thank you very much. Sorry for being late.
Gail Ovier. Sorry.
My name is Gail Wavier. My husband Lester and I have lived at 117 Scantic Road since 1976. First of all, I want to thank you all for all the work that you do in town. It's a lot of time and effort on your part, and I think most folks really appreciate it. This is the second meeting on this topic, and for the first meeting, I was not able to attend due to vacation. I sent in a letter, which you filed. But I'd like to reiterate some of my concerns. I did read the changes that you made. I think I got the right copy. There's a lot of documents out there, and I still have concerns. I think you probably know what they are. The biggest concern is not the chickens and the cars. I think you did a good job addressing those, and I don't have many cars and I don't have chickens, so. But it's the temporary event. The biggest concern is that the way this regulation is written, it could allow a group or individual to start operating a commercial enterprise on a piece of private property, regardless of how it is zoned. Because the regulation still states now, if you read it, it doesn't matter how it's zoned, that temporary permit. It put forward for this hearing with regards to, temporary events, seasonal events. It seems to be simply to change from allowing events once a year to 4 times a year. But where are the specific regulations around the actual zoning permit required? I couldn't find those. A permit can be obtained regardless of how the property is zoned. It says it right there. I double checked it, Mike, right after you made that comment. This conflicts, I believe, with your, is it NPC, which was supposed to be the guide for zoning and how we do it in town. A person could actually run a total of 4 outside events on their land throughout the year, but for how long? Over 3, it has to go for your approval, but I could say, I'm gonna run an event for 2 weeks. I'm gonna run a temporary event for 4 weeks. And there's no restriction on that. There's no limitations. And that's where people will take advantage and look for ways to get whatever they want. There's no rules on the noise, the hours this event can operate, sanitation requirements, traffic safety and control of safety. Approval is required by the different departments in town, but what rules and guidelines are they using to approve or deny it? Per the changes, I believe this was you were trying to improve it from the first one, where it was just at the discretion of the zoning enforcement officer. Now, if it meets three different situations, at their discretion, there's amplified music, it's greater than 3 days. But that being said, I could wake up one day and have, with no notice, and have a carnival setting up in a plot of land next to me that's gonna last 3 days. And here's a real life example. If a carnival is going to be staged for 3 days in a field next to horse stables, which group in town is going to decide if that is detrimental to those horses? And how do those stable people get notified? We have a lot of horse farms in town. We have a lot of people with cows and other livestock. None of that is addressed in this. There's also a question of insurance. If people own a private property, so it's not business, and they decide, well, we're going to get this permit and the town allows it, do you require proof of insurance so the town is not liable for any accident on that property that you have given a permit to? And the notice to neighbors is also, again, really bothersome. It's like neighbors have no chance to voice their concerns on a permit request. So like I said, once again, you can wake up and think there's some huge event, and the way this is written, it could last a month. There's no restrictions. And I guess in my last comment, I just get concerned that some of these items seem to be coming up over and over again. Like things that are coming up again that were discussed previously, this whole special permit, temporary permit in places that aren't zoned appropriately. It seemed like we had put those to rest. Even the temporary permit was brought up in the past year and it was tabled. And I guess the question that I think other people have is, what's the driver for this? I get your explanation when we have little stickies and we decided to do a cleanup job, but it just seems like some of these things just keep coming up over and over again. So that's the only comment. And I did just want to make a public note that for people who are interested, I believe you have another text amendment change on the books for your next meeting. So I would encourage anybody that's interested to go out to the website and view and see what that text amendment change is about. So thank you very much for your time.
Rand Stanley.
Thank you. I'm going to be reasonably brief. name's Stanley, 87 Rye Street. I take a look at the definition of a temporary event. I don't see anything that defines that temporary event in terms of the time frame, other than the, I guess you would say the review process, is it 3 days or longer, that it would go to the zoning enforcement and or the planning and zoning commission. So is a temporary event allowed to go up to 3 days on a permit without a review? Or how exactly, how do we define what a temporary event is? Is it defined as a 24-hour period? Is that one event? Or, I mean, that's a question for the commission. The other thing I'd like to bring up is a process clarification. And many people don't understand the machinations of the workings of local government. Now, when these text amendments are brought forward, they can be brought forward in two manners, to my understanding. One is through the Planning and Zoning Commission making a recommendation to the town planner and or in this case, the planning consultant that the town has had on the books for a few years now. The other is that the staff takes a look at the regulations and submits a regulation to CROG, which is the regional planning organization at the statewide level. I would just really like to impress upon the commission that you guys are the firewall for this community. We don't need to be part of a regional, state-operated zoning organization. And by that, what I mean is you're here to look after our interests and the taxpayers' interests. Please, I know you guys are volunteers, just keep that in mind for us. Okay, you're the firewall for us. So I understand zoning regulations need to be cleaned up occasionally. I work in government, I have for over 22 years, and my regulations are very clear. Okay, zoning is off in a world all by itself because it is completely subjective. As I said, I'm going to be brief. As far as commercial vehicles go, many communities actually have the weight limit that you brought up, Mike, in regards to very specific weights, 15,000 pounds and under. Nothing, you're allowed, okay, and it doesn't limit the number. 15,000 or 15,001 pound and up, there are special permits that can be applied for and granted, depending upon the zone and the situation that you're in. So there can be clarification for that. But keep in mind, the number of commercial vehicles for the small businessmen and women in this community, they're the bedrock. And every one of those vehicles, every one of those properties, they pay taxes. Those taxes fund the employees that work at every single community, okay? And listen, we all know, no good deed goes unpunished, does it? Not one, okay? And as much as, I'm gonna say it, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, but why the town of East Windsor would be concerned with whether I have a couple or 3 chickens is well beyond my scope and my understanding. Okay, private property taxes are paid. Plain and simple, done. I do support Gail. I support what's going on in terms of the temporary events. I effectively see that type of text amendment as an end run around a zone change that was requested by a very, well, I'm gonna say it, the Historical Society. They didn't get what they wanted and they're coming back again. I thought that was solved. If you're dealing with blight didn't get passed. That got soundly voted down in a public town meeting. We have ordinances on the books right now that deal with property maintenance. Right now, we have not had an appointed property maintenance control officer.
You're at four and a half.
I'm done. For over 4.5 years. We also don't have a property maintenance board code of appeals. Those are ordinances. Those ordinances are required to be followed by everyone. They're not subjective. When we have ordinances on the books, the people of this community have every expectation that the administrations in place will follow them. Thank you. Xavier Vega.
Everybody, Xavier Vega, I've lived here for 25 years, I'm right down the corner on South Water Street. Thank you for hearing me today. I have a question, mainly about the chickens. I grew up working in Wagner's fields, hanging tobacco and stuff. I worked at Flower Power. I've been in farms all my life. I've raised chickens, I've hatched them, and I think there are some challenges presented here, or maybe a new approach to smaller farming that may be in the pipeline. One of my primary questions is with free range chickens. I'm a little confused, or I guess uninformed as to why that's the thing in capital letters, that absolutely not, under no cases. I think there's a lot of risks and challenges associated with free ranging. I think chickens are definitely a fad, and a lot of people are free ranging without doing it right. So I understand on one hand why you may do that, but on the other hand, I don't think it should be an across the board block. I think that's unfair for the people who have the space, the means, and the time to do it. On the other hand, I think some of these regulation changes in terms of spacing through property lines do help people with smaller properties, and that makes me really happy to see, because I would like to see more people getting into this. Now, in terms of this kind of new approach to farming that I'm talking about, I think when I look at the regulations for coops and having to submit a plan for that, what frustrates me most of all is I wonder where it'll stop. When am I going to have to submit a proposal to build a birdhouse? I think on your own property, it seems like people are in agreement that we want to be able to do things in our backyard, and one of those things is having a garden. I'm going to bet someone in here is growing squash probably, and to do that successfully after years, you need fertilizers that can leach into wetlands, and the runoff creates serious problems for wetland areas. But if you raise chickens, you can rotate them within your garden and essentially get free fertilizer, reduce the need for those artificial fertilizers. And I wonder with the coop regulations, the static or moving nature of those coops doesn't seem clear here. I think there's going to be some people who want more of a shed style, and some people who may want to explore rotational grazing that helps reduce those dependencies on things that damage the wonderful Connecticut River a lot of us live on. The other question I have is a connection between numbers 4 and 5 in that in section 305.3. I see no roosters, which again, on one hand, I can understand. They're loud, they make noise all day. But I have worked on farms where we didn't have a rooster. They got sent to the big chicken nugget fryer in the sky. And then we had opening hens, and each day we were coming in to 2 chickens lost, just a pile of Looney Tunes feathers in the driveway. 3 chickens lost the next day, because roosters play a social role in protecting their flock and alerting them to all kinds of dangers. You wouldn't need a predator alarm if you had a rooster. And I think what those predator alarms can do, once again, in reference to our wonderful wetlands, I don't know if anyone's seen like the bald eagles that we have on some parts of the Connecticut River or things like that. I think a bald eagle is much more likely to stick around when it hears the rooster versus a coyote alarm. But if you can't have the rooster, you may need the predator alarm. And so I see a conflict there where the rooster plays a natural role that can solve one of these issues, but it's another pretty hard line, I feel. I don't know a lot of people in East Windsor who own more than 3 acres. And I don't think those people should have any less of a right to have that rooster. Very much.
In the area.
My name's Tim Garrity. I'm on Main Street in Broadbrook, and you know, that most of the stuff you guys put forward already is common sense. You know, I don't think about 15,000 pounds. I think that's a light truck. I think you gotta go like 25.9 or something like that. And that seems a little more reasonable, but there's the other things. There's some unhappy people in Broadbrook. You know, I live in Broadbrook on the Pine, and they should complain about anything. no matter what the regulation, every year, I have a neighbor who finds a new regulation to complain about just because we don't get along. And he was big in politics in town, and I think that nepotism thing goes over so well in Broadbrook these days. I moved here from Newington. Lived in Hartford all my life. I don't mind roosters crowing. We have 2 houses down, wakes me up every morning, but I have a guy who calls the town and complains about my dogs barking. I said, well, the dogs are woke up by the rooster. During the winter, the geese wake me up at 4 in the morning, and I don't complain about them either. So I think, the zoning, I think you need to take with a little bit of levity. We have, just because you can doesn't mean you should, is what I'm getting at. Just because there's a rule or a law doesn't mean you have to enforce it. I think you have to, kind of temper the mood and attitude of certain people with the enforcement of the regulations of the statutes. And I don't think that's done all the time because the same person who's the cause of a lot of my aggravation there is the same person who complains. And then I get these letters in the mail and I try to explain without, using any kind of expletives about what kind of person this is, but he's retired now, he's drinking himself to death, so I guess sooner or later it'll be over, because I get along really well with his family, whereas he doesn't. And, but that's another thing, and then the other thing is I moved here because it's a farming community. I moved from Newington, where they had the best schools in Connecticut at the time, and then 24 years ago, I moved here, and I brought my kids here because it was like Green Acres. It's not Green Acres anymore. We got a lot of development, people pushing against it, and I don't see that as a good thing. I mean, it's a necessary thing because we need a tax base, but I don't see it as a good thing. And so we have to temper the needs of the community versus the taxes, and, I mean, I don't know if the school's got any better, but my kids are out of school and they made it through, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for you guys. I came here with the attitude that I was gonna have a problem, and I was gonna have to say something really nasty and, get my point across, and I didn't get that at all from you guys, and I, of course, appreciate your support. So,
Here. All right, I'm gonna butcher another one. First is Johnny, last name Hatchaw. Okay, sorry.
East Road, I want to speak about, I guess, is, commercial vehicles. I have no issue with commercial vehicles. Care if anybody has them in the yard, old cars, broken down cars. I don't care, front yard, backyard, side yard. To me, I enjoy seeing those things. I moved to this town, I know it's rural. I grew up in South Windsor, I lived in Manchester. I came here because of that rural. People work outside, work on their yard, work on their car, work on their tractors. That's what I want to see. That's what I want to experience when I live here. Same thing with free-range chickens. It says no free-range chickens. I like seeing chickens along the side of the road as I drive by. I think that's a good thing. I like it. I don't understand as far as the regulations. Why there's a restriction for the chickens with the association to acreage when they have to be cooped up and not free range. I don't understand that connection there, because if they can't go free range or on an acre of land, why are you saying you need an acre of land to have 10 chickens? And like when I grew up in South Windsor, their unit per acre is 32 chickens per acre, and we're at 10, and I feel we're a much more rural community than South Windsor. And when I was in Manchester, they had 12 regardless of lot size. So I think as far as chicken units per acre, we could do a lot better than where we're at. And also I had a question about the wetlands, because I know in South Windsor, they say specifically animals are allowed to pasture on wetlands during grazing season. So when we say we're not allowed on wetlands, and then I don't know what agency is responsible, do we even need to put anything in our regulations for wetlands? Can that just be a wetlands committee regulation for where them to enforce? Do we even have to say anything about wetlands? So.
Francis Neal.
Hi, Francis Neal, 153 Mill Road. There's any notes in this, and I just have a few things I agree with, everyone's comments on chickens. I had just a couple of notes as well, with, I believe somewhere the regulations we're proposing 5 chickens in a backyard, but there are many places where you go to buy chickens and you can't buy them in lots of smaller than 6, so, you know, don't wanna snap the little neck of one. And then also, when it comes to the regulations, or to the need for a permit or have inspection of your chicken coop, I mean, is that gonna spread to dog houses or other structures that you have on your land, or when your kids are playing, playhouses and that kind of stuff? 6 chickens don't take up a lot of space, and their coop, you know, as far as being afraid of predators, I don't think that that's a big, I got coyotes all around me anyways, and I have a dog, and they keep the coyotes out of my yard, so. Also, if you have a fence, my biggest thing is good fences make good neighbors, so when it comes to a lot of this that we're talking about tonight, you don't like to look at the cars in my backyard, and I'm not trying to be mean or anything here, but if you don't like it, my father put up a fence because he didn't like what the neighbors had in their backyard, so I own my property, you own your property, I'll keep within mine, you keep within yours, talk to each other over your fences, but, I mean, ultimately, this is my property, and I'd like to have most of the say of what goes on. Second thing I had, moving on to the camper usage, I just want to make sure that it's, you know, if I had somebody coming to stay for the weekend or for a week at my house and they wanted to have an extra bed, or 7 in my camper, I can put them up out there just for temporarily. They're not living there, but they can temporarily live there. But again, it's my camper, my yard, and if I want to have 7 extra people living in my camper, it's sort of like annexed to my house. I don't know. Just a thought on that. Question about the vehicle storage, the commercial vehicles. I just wonder about the, long road truckers who have large, all the words, big cab overs, or, you know, like sleeper vans where the tractors where they drive across country, they come home, spend a week. Are you saying that that guy's got to park his truck somewhere else? He can't park it in his own driveway? That's just a thought on that. And I just ultimately, just for me, it goes back to good fences make good neighbors, and good neighbors talk to each other and work things out. So those are my 2 cents. Thank you very much.
I can get the Stephen part, Corralo.
I'm almost, they're ready to go.
Okay, thank you. All right, that is everybody who signed up. Is there anyone left in the audience that did not sign up that would like to speak? Okay, so now I'm going to turn to online. Is there anyone online that would like to comment on this proposal?
Hello, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if I've been recognized. My name is Robert Leach, Church Street, Broadbrook.
Yes, sir. You may begin.
So just a couple of points, and this goes back to registered vehicles and commercial vehicles. I think a previous speaker brought up a very good point. If you're going to limit commercial vehicles to 1, I think that's a very business unfriendly action. If you're going to do something like that, maybe you should look at weight limits for vehicles rather than the number of vehicles. I do have some friends of mine that live here in town. They've got 3 commercial vehicles parked in their driveway. One is the owner of the house. He's a business owner, runs his own business. His 2 sons also live in that house. They work for different businesses and they drive commercial vehicles. So your zoning regulations would make it so they can no longer park their vehicles in their driveway. I think that's really unfair to business owners, considering they're the backbone of our community. Second thing is unregistered vehicles. I know previous speakers have spoken out about this, and I will too. I also have unregistered vehicles in my yard, 3 of them right now. 2 of them are in the process of being restored. There's no way I can go and register them. Both vehicles, or 2 of the vehicles anyway, do not even have an engine in it right now. One's at the machine shop, the other one's in my garage getting finished up. So there's no way I'm going to register those 2 vehicles. The third vehicle is a race car. It can never be registered again to be on the road, but it is a vehicle. There's no way it's going to happen. So, and you know, if the zoning enforcement is going to come and tag my vehicles to be towed, that's not going to happen either. So I don't know. I think you ought to revise what you've got in your regulations, make your regulations more business friendly rather than unfriendly. And then again, look at the last bastion of free states we have in the US, state of Maine. Any of these regulations proposed in almost any community in the state of Maine would never fly. It's because they enjoy their freedom. That's all I got. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else online that would like to speak?
Hi, it's Noreen Farmer, 247 South Water Street. I just wanted to thank you for the work you do, both your staff and yourself as a planning commission. Everything that you undertake is very complex, and you're in a place where whatever you do, not everybody is going to be happy. You know, there's situations, just what you talked about tonight with putting cars in the backyard. I don't have a backyard. I have a whole lot of backyard, but I couldn't possibly put a car back there. It would fall down the 80-foot hill into the Connecticut River. So I have to just amend myself to do what I need to do to accommodate what I need to do in my life. And that's the reality in the entire town. There's no way you're going to make everybody happy. There's things that get done that I don't agree with. There's things that other people don't agree with. I trust that you take into consideration everything that comes through your office, from complaints from residents or non-complaints and the statutes that you have to do, and put in the common sense of being East Windsor residents to try to put the best stuff forward in the best way you can. And I have faith that you're taking everything in that everybody's telling you and will make the proper decisions for the sake of all of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else online? Okay, I think we've heard from everybody who wanted to speak.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if I could have a minute to speak again, or a couple of minutes to speak again, briefly.
You have new information you'd like to speak about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Good answer. In 50 years of being involved in town politics, I have never seen or experienced such a congenial group of people coming together to state their case in a way that we're communicating, we're preaching the same words that Noreen just used, trust. I saw the word used 3 times somewhere in the preparation of these text amendments, called discretion, and I trust the discretion of our zoning enforcement officer. Okay, and I've seen everything in the past, from the, trying to replace the police chief to the, I won't name any names, but the fighting of the, what I call the businesses of the Hatfields against the McCoys. They're down on Newberry Road. That situation has been almost not only alleviated, but improved to the point where the people of this town are coming together. I really consider this a challenge, the job that you've got to do. I consider it an opportunity for all of us. And I want us to all keep talking and communicating like this, because we got a progressive rural community, as I like to call it, that's got a lot of opportunity for the people who've been there for years and years and years, and the people who want to come here to live. And I thank you all.
Yes, ma'am. Please come up to the podium, and I'd like you to sign the sheet, please.
Yeah, one little thing to say. Joan Nordell from Clark Road, East Windsor.
Ma'am, could you
I
please
just
sign it?
wanna make a, statement. When you're referring to backyards and put it in regulations, you need to be careful, because some people's backyards look right into somebody else's backyard. If you're saying they can have all this stuff and it doesn't matter, and you're in a neighborhood where backyards all meet up, that might not be so great. I don't have anybody in my backyard, so it doesn't, pertain to me, but I'm concerned about what other people would, because everybody's saying, oh, it's okay in your backyard, but it might not be in everybody's backyard. That's all.
My backyard.
Waste those. Pick them. Yeah.
Okay, one more time, anyone else? Okay, there was one attendant, Jackie Cody, who gave us a written statement. It's rather lengthy, so I'm not gonna read it, but it will be posted on the town's website. And you can, it's basically, the gist of it is that she wrote that we have plenty of regulations that are not being enforced. Why do we need more? That's the gist of her comment. Okay. Does anybody on the commission have anything else that they would like to comment on?
No?
I'd like to ask Danielle for clarification. Stephen brought up the concept of free range chickens and, large scale farmers. Which I think is a very good point. We've been focused on people who wanted a couple chickens in their backyard and enabling that. And I'm assuming, and maybe I'm assuming wrong, that if you were a large scale farm and you had chickens, you would go back to, C and D. And you could do free range and you could do large scale, that this was the new section was intended to, I'll say, allow a couple of chickens, a small number on small lots. But there's still the ability to farm in East Windsor.
Yeah, that is correct. So there are separate regulations for commercial farms, which are more than likely larger than these parcels we're talking about. I am interested in looking at this for maybe if you do have a lot more acreage and you're not commercial and you want to have free range. The reason that was written in there was because a lot of the feedback that I received over the past year was from residents saying they did not want free range chickens, that they're running around the roads, that they were a concern. So as Doreen had said, you can't really please everybody, but it is something I can maybe look into about for larger large pieces of land, sure, maybe that's something that's okay, again, it's basically on feedback, so yeah, I'll revisit that and see what I can come up with for something else to propose.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? I guess my 2 cents of this is I read through what's on the books right now, and if we enforced what's on the books right now, there'd be a lot more unhappy people than what are in this room, because some of the requirements now are very stringent, basically say no. And we're trying to find a path to try to accommodate different circumstances, allow people more flexibility. The thing that comes to my mind is always, we've had a lot of euphemisms thrown around, is like, your rights end where my property begins. So you wanting to live and let live when it causes me a hardship, not exactly right. The thought of don't live next to a pig farm is different than if you live next to a beautiful home and somebody came and totally the next tenant, the next occupant moves in, totally neglects it and is not what you move next to. It's now something totally different. So these are the things that I'm struggling with, or trying to find ways to accommodate the live and let live mentality, as well as why does my neighbor get to do whatever they want and disrupt my life? Where are my rights to, life, liberty, and happiness? So that's what we're faced up against here. And like it was said, we can't make everyone happy, but we're trying to find a middle of the road that should appease most people. So I've got 2 pages of notes, and which I'm sure that you have the same. What I propose we do is keep the public hearing open. We summarize all of the comments or feedback that we got, make the changes that we've talked about and suggested also. And rather than sit here now and try to answer everybody over the next 2 hours of what questions they had, we'll put together a summary and try to apply answers to some of the things, because some of them, again, were misconceptions. And I think the one that I want to bring up is with the whole temporary events one, is that anything that could be considered disruptive or affect your neighbor needs to come before a public hearing. That's what we want to put in there. It's not in there now, but we want to put it in there. So somebody can't just throw up a carnival next door to you, because that's disruptive. And it would have to come up, but that's what we're trying to add into there. So I'm trying to, let people understand that, somebody having I can't tell you what, that has no noise, no nothing, that doesn't affect somebody, shouldn't have to be jumping through a million hoops to have it. But if you're gonna have something that's loud and your neighbors are gonna know that it's going on, then we need to look at it. Okay, so can I have it? Go ahead.
And my big thing is the commercial vehicles. We're not trying to stop people. The gentleman said online, he said, he owns his own company, he brings a commercial vehicle home. His son brings a commercial vehicle home. His other son brings a commercial vehicle home. That's not the intent, is to stop people from working. I bring commercial vehicles home. I'm one of those guys, and I know there's a half dozen other guys out here doing the same thing I'm doing. That's not the intent, is to stop. I think we should go the totally opposite way on that in the commercial vehicles. Add more than 2 or 3, or just one that they call for now. Anybody else?
All right, so then, can I have a motion to continue the public hearing, please?
I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing on application PZ 2024-10, the Town of East Windsor's text amendment to the zoning regulations, till our next regular meeting, which is August 27.
We have a motion to continue the public hearing. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The public hearing is continued till the August 27th meeting.
Great, thank you. Very nice.
Well, this is the file.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
No way to know what's.
Yeah.
It's on the website. What's the very bad. Number one, it has to be.
You're just gonna wait a minute for the room to settle down, and then we'll continue with our meeting.
Not reading on.
Here's my. That was the last page. Cover has the last item.
Yeah, it does. Others don't.
Okay, a couple items left on our agenda. We have no new public hearings, no old business. So under other business, we have a informal discussion with Kevin Kidder, Meadow Farms Open Space.
Thank you very much.
Four.
It's Peter, Farms Road, joined by one Carolyn Peter, and Paul Bruno, Field Circle, President of the Meadow Farms Common Association. For our last meeting, our open discussion we had last time, I was asked to review the meeting minutes of planning and zoning as to why out of 4.75 acres, which exceeds the 20% of Meadow Farms Common Association, which left a 1 acre only. I reviewed all the planning and zoning meeting minutes,
Excuse me a second. Could you please be quiet back and move? Thank you.
I spent a significant amount of time with planning and zoning, and at home through the website. And starting back in 2000, I believe it was 2006, when the sole owner of the development was purchased by the contractor. By doing my due diligence of significant hours, there's absolutely nothing that I found in those documents with a reason that stated why there is 1 acre in excess of the required 20%. Going on page 1, actually page 2 of the document, I stated that, there is the 4.75 acres of undevelopable land that's behind Six Field Circle, and it wraps around Farms Road. Just for. Actually, I'll fix that in there, that'll be a little bit easier to show. We approached, as I stated earlier in last meeting, Carolyn and I approached the Meadow Farms Common Association to purchase that land that's in excess of that 20%. On page 3 of your handout, which I also have here, this is basically the, on your handout, our site map here.
This is our house located at the end of the cul-de-sac on 26 Farms Road. And this is our current land area shown here. And what we are asking is for that 1 acre, is that we extend our property line approximately 1 acre, which would encompass the roadway that the town has an easement that goes back to the drainage ditch over here. So we would be extending our property line on all 3 sides of the house, which is approximately 1 acre of land. So if we actually looked at our existing house, rather than look at the GIS map, through, Google Earth, we have the house here. This is currently coming from the cul-de-sac with the road that goes around to the drainage ditch. The drainage ditch is over here. My wife and I are looking to basically purchase from the opposite side of the road, going back as outlined in white right here. So there were some questions also regarding the there was also some questions about the conservation easement that's in place. The conservation easement, which is on the last page of the handout, the conservation easement is actually way back here. And it's depicted on the last page of your map. So there were some questions about, encroaching on the conservation easement, which we're not looking to purchase. As far as the expansion of our property and, by going by the roadway here and purchasing that area from the Meadow Farms and Condo Association, all easements and restrictions that the town has to enter the retention area along with the back pond here, all those easements would be remained in place. I don't know if she from the town actually, because I know she was looking into the regulations as well, if you found anything different than I found. But as far as what I see here, the requirements were 20%. There's in excess of 20%. And, before I was looking to purchase the entire area, which I would have to be through a trust. However, there's 20% in excess of the 20%, and I don't foresee a reason why the additional land could not be purchased.
So I read through all the minutes also. And the original approval, at the time of the approval, the requirement was 60%. A lot of conversation in those minutes about the 60% and how the open space was calculated, was almost every blade of grass. And there was an acknowledgement that something needed to change with the regulations, which they have since. So at the time it was 60%, but also at the time, there was 44 units planned.
They built like a large development.
So that all changed, right, when Farms Road came in, so there was a modification, which I'm sure that then they calculated these numbers. I will say to you that when I did the mathematics for, they're over 20% by a little bit, less than an acre. I included this drainage easement when I did that. When I went around and said, where's the open space? So that I'm sort of looking at, this is really, because I saw your number.
Could you repeat?
So on the map, and as you've depicted this acre, you're trying, I think you're saying it's not in the open space.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. So we have approximately almost 5 acres that, is set aside, that there are no homes on.
And technically, all the land is part of Meadow Farms Association, but there's approximately almost 5 acres that is not developable. There are no homes on it. And we believe it's in excess of 20%. My understanding was that we had to maintain 20%. The Kitas are looking to purchase a small, well, what's in excess of 20%? So is it not 20, is it not accurate?
Well, if an application were to come before the commission and they looked at the current regulations and the issue of how much open space was being dedicated on a development that they were looking at, 20% would be the number. Currently, your open space as depicted on the map is what was approved. So that's what's required right now, is what was approved. Anything different would have to be a modification of the plan, just so that, right, I mean, that's, just want to be clear on that. So that, and the whole question here is whether or not the approval is opened up for a property transfer.
So what we're really looking for is some guidance as to, we're trying to maintain the spirit of it. We're trying to maintain the spirit of having open spaces, you know, the town had requested originally. But we also want to find an accommodation for, I think what is a relatively small amount of space that the Kitas would like.
Okay, I did exactly what I asked of you also. I read through all the minutes, and what I found also, as Ruth had mentioned, was the way that open space was calculated back then was, like I said, everything, the center islands, the land between the houses, everything. There was a lengthy discussion between the commission members saying that the actual fact that at that point, they weren't calling it open space, they were calling it public space, as it was being referred to. So they found that there was no benefit to the public for counting all of this land in between the houses and in the center islands and everything like that. So the Meadow Farms Commission came, or the applicant came back. I believe it was lot 6 that they completely redesigned to now make a continuous space. And they designated it as public space for the good of the community, for the good of the residents of the development. So at that point, it was determined that that piece of property would remain as open public space.
For the good of whom?
The residents of the community.
So our residents in April voted to actually sell all of that land to the Kitas, and, you know, now they're only asking for actually 1 acre of that 5. But we had a vote, in fact, I believe it was 28 units to 0. There might have been 2 units. I'll have to remember the exact vote, but it was overwhelmingly in favor of actually overwhelmingly in favor of selling all of that land. But if they only want an acre now, because we understand there may be some issues with something that's designated as open space, we're okay with an acre. We're trying to be accommodating our neighbors here.
I understand, but as a commission, what we're trying to look at is not just your approved plot. How does this apply to every development or anybody else that's had an approved open space designation? And now if they want to come back and say, well, geez, I want to change it, I want to do something different. And the best way it was described to me is what was approved is a legal agreement. It's a contract. And you're coming asked to renegotiate the contract. In order to renegotiate a contract, most likely it has to be beneficial to both parties.
Which other party, I'm sorry?
The town.
Okay,
so
that would not be beneficial.
how would you selling off part of your open space benefit the town?
Well, maybe I misunderstood, because I thought earlier the goal of the open space was for the benefit of the association.
But it also, every term and condition that was in that agreement applies and still applies. So what you're asking to open up that whole agreement and renegotiate it. And in most cases, you don't renegotiate a contract unless it benefits both parties.
What would benefit the town then? We could,
I don't see what would.
what I'm not I guess what I'm not understanding is what would impact the town? Maybe I could ask it that way.
We're setting precedents to renegotiating site plan approvals.
If you do for one, you do for all.
Well, they still have the basic plan, when an applicant comes before you with a plan, you evaluate it on its merits. You either say, no, that impacts other people, what you want to do, like if we were to sell that land to the Kitas, and their intent was to, I don't know, put cars back there, you say that does not beneficial to the town. Or if it would, if I could just add, or if it impacted other neighbors, you might say, hey, that's not good for the neighbors. And if it said that, hey, the other people in the town could not access the land, that would impact other people, but we're not saying any of that. All we're trying to do is just transport really a small portion to the Kitas.
Spots only.
Yeah, but you're giving them preferential treatment. What if I want to buy that land? Am I able to buy that piece of property?
Yeah, sure. You want to offer me more?
So you plan to put it up public
No,
sale?
I don't. What I'm saying is, there was a request by one of our neighbors. Our association agreed to it. I think I'm not really clear how like, for instance, if someone here wanted to sell a piece of land to another, person, it's just a private transaction.
Not when it's deeded in as public space.
I understand that. I was about to add, of course, I understand that there are restrictions here. What I guess I'm not understanding is how it might negatively impact the town or any of our neighbors around us. If it is, of course, we would want to make an accommodation, but it appears like all we wanted, really literally they're adding like a tiny portion to the property.
And that's,
Side of the town.
well, what are they on your property? Is that a shed right there?
That is correct.
That's on town property.
Well, it's not town property.
Well, sorry, it's the association. So. So that shed was put on, it's not even on your property line.
I appreciate that comment. What you just said was, it is on town property. Then you corrected that, and I appreciate that. What has happened since the inception of building our home on this parcel of land is exactly that. Confusion, misconception, misunderstanding. When the road was put in, I understand the town didn't have to notify us. It would have been common courtesy, although it was not our property, it wasn't town property. I guess it wouldn't be Meadow Farms Association's property. I came out to them removing trees and not offering any explanation as to what was going on. And then I was referred to the town. And the town kept saying to me, do not worry about safety or anything that's going on there, because we will take care of that and make sure that it's made right. So what I'm saying, we're trying to do our due diligence. With working with complicated, don't get the correct vocabulary and language from the town. And that was a prime example. You using that word, that is town property.
So.
And at the time, the town came through after they put in the road and said, we can make an accommodation by putting in a sign that says it's scratch into that. So I'm very confused. Is it town property? Is it Meadow Farms property? This is why this is so complicated to move forward.
So getting back to my question with the shed, that shouldn't have to do anything to do with the shed not being on your property, what you just spoke about. The shed, when you put a shed out there, it should have a, you know, building permit and all that stuff today, go through zoning and all that. I don't know if it's.
So it's permitted, it was put in the wrong location. When we originally investigated it, we were told that it was too late to have that changed. So we worked with the Peters and tried to work on an accommodation that was fair to both of us. I think we're trying to be good neighbors to each other.
I just noticed from your pictures, I mean, I never caught it, looked at it, it's run a GIS.
No, it is encroaching. It's encroaching and so are the trees, but, you know, as good neighbors, we're trying to work it out. And we came to, well, actually, the original request was more than generous of the entire property. We understand that that doesn't make sense because there was open space. And it would be a lot more complicated to transfer open space to a land trust. So we were told, and what we had understood was that 20% was what was required. Since this was in excess, we're just trying to find an accommodation that fits both of us as neighbors, instead of me coming and suing these guys because they're on our land. So we're trying to find an accommodation. I guess I'm not really sure. I guess the benefit to the town is that we're trying to work something out without having it messy, and we're keeping the spirit of 20%. I don't know how many times somebody has come to you to ask you to make a change to open space. Maybe you guys can answer it.
Never.
So it's obviously rare. In fact, if this is the first time, it's hard to believe there'll be a flood of requests. And even if there are, it's your discretion to decide whether it's appropriate or not. For instance, if we come and said, yeah, we want to sell all that, and you say, hey, there's no open space left. That's not appropriate. Okay, I understand that. That would be true, but I think we're trying to make a reasonable request. I think it's in the spirit of keeping, some more than the spirit, it's in the letter of keeping the 20%. And I'm not really sure why it has to benefit the town if we're keeping to the spirit of 20% and we're two neighbors are trying to work something out without getting into messy lawsuits and other things. It seems fair, I don't know, to me. Maybe you guys can help me out as to what we're missing here.
Well, my reference to beneficial to the town had to deal with any type of a contract negotiation. So what you have is a contract with the town for your development, and you're asking to renegotiate it.
Well, we're asking, first off, what I heard a second ago was that they even said 60%. So this was a messy, I only moved in 2 or 3 years ago. This was a mess. Sounds like this whole development was a mess in terms of how it was done over the years. You know, it was first it was going to be 44 units, then it was 28, then part of it got split off into private homes. So I almost feel like this is a corner case that is not your typical development. And you know, if you can tell us what you would like to make it beneficial to you, we're certainly to take into consideration for sure. But all we're trying to do is keep the spirit of 20%. And have 2 neighbors try to resolve this without it getting messy. So if there's guidance you want us to do, we're trying to be flexible. Well, we couldn't transfer the whole 4.75 acres, got it. Didn't want to create a land trust, got it. We went back and said, hey, let's just do the excess, no problem, we'll do it. You know, I think we're just trying to be reasonable. If there's something we're missing here. And it's a corner case. You've never had this come up before, so the odds of having 1 million people come in is probably.
We've had one this year.
Yeah, you had one.
That was a referral from the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
And we denied it.
Okay.
Because again, it was back to opening up a previously approved subdivision design, and again, it opened up, it set that precedence for exactly that.
Okay, so what we're trying to correct, if it helps, is we're trying to correct some encroachment onto our property. I don't want these guys to have to, put down mature trees and get rid of the shed, which, by the way, I can't legally have, I can't have that happen through the town because of some, I think, Dan, you can probably help us here, there's some type of term limitations because it's more than X number of years since the permit was filed. So I can sue them, but I don't see how that's in the spirit of being good neighbors. But they are on our land, so what Keys are willing to do is buy a relatively small amount of land.
Is it like a Cloder barn shed, when they dropped it off, or they built it in place?
Well,
Okay.
there's also mature trees they'd like to keep. And there's probably other stuff over there that technically shouldn't be there. But again, there's a statute of limitations on having the town enforce it. The only way for me to enforce it is to sue them. It seems like giving them a small amount of land that we don't even use and keeping the 20%. I mean, it's a win-win, I think.
Anybody else have any comments or questions?
I do, actually. So the boundary you guys are looking at is actually an approach of the access to that ditch?
The access is an easement.
Yes, but you're proposing to buy the road that the town put in.
It's not a road, it's a gravel path.
Correct.
It's on our property.
Yes, it is.
It's not town property, it's our property.
But it's an easement.
Yeah, and the easement stays. Nothing changes.
Yes, but will that road no longer be allowed to be used? No.
Has to be.
Put trees over it to prevent people from going down it?
The trees are not over it.
I realize that right now, you know exactly what it is.
It's not, we do not plan on changing anything with the town's easement. That easement, obviously, that drainage ditch benefits not only Farms Road, but also the entire Meadow Farms development. And as far as what benefit does the town, that's in my backyard.
Correct, your concern at the time is other people who are using that
My
road.
concern is that storm drain plugs up and everything, if there's a problem, I'm the first one to see it, or my wife's the first one to see it, and it's gonna back up the whole neighborhood.
I mean, I'm not a zoning expert, but I think an easement is an easement. That if they were to blockade it, they would be in pretty big trouble with the town. So, that's just not, it's not gonna happen because it's not.
Blocking anything, I'm not planting trees there, I'm not doing anything.
But one of your concerns last time was you said people were walking down that road.
That's correct.
So.
But that would Meadow Farms homeowners, so we're not planning on doing that, because, it's on our land, we sold it.
But if it's open,
What would I do?
but if it's open space, can't anybody walk down that road?
I don't know, Ruth Ann, you'd have to educate us on that. It's our property.
It's his property, so nobody here other than town people can actually walk that road because it would be trespassing on their property.
I thought this was considered open space, which is allowed.
I don't know, we don't have a clear answer.
Yeah, that's an interesting question because it homeowner association owned open space.
Just the
No
whole.
details about.
It's not
It's
public,
not
it's not town owned
public.
public,
It's
open
owned
space.
by the
If you own a house there.
association.
I mean, it's not turned over to the town, so I'm not really clear, I think we own it, you're trespassing with it. Would that be right?
Open space easement, there's no language, it's just shown on the map as a easement, open space easement to.
It says like conservation, is that different?
Conservation easement.
I'm sorry,
I just repeated what you said.
yeah, I said it's shown as a conservation easement, so, and that easement, by the way, is way over there, not even part of the property that they're looking at.
Yeah, it's
I
actually-
was, so you had mentioned earlier, that's why I brought that question up, just in the rear portion would be in the conservation.
Yes, it's actually on page 6 of that handout where it shows the conservation easement.
Yeah, I have the map. here.
But just, I don't know your name, I'm sorry.
Yes, Dave Eason.
Yeah, I did.
There's two easements. One's a drainage easement to the town and one is a conservation easement in favor of the town of East Windsor. And so that goes behind the Kittis property. They share a boundary there and it actually comes up into the corner and
Back here.
pops over. So. Well, yeah. Yeah. The conservation easement, with here, it actually comes in here. So, again, this piece.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we can, as you can tell, we're trying to be flexible as to whatever the commission would, allow us to do. I mean, our main goal is to help them solve some issues they had here. But I don't think we've answered Dave's question about, it's honestly my homeowners association's property. So I assume it is not really open space, it's a conservation easement, is that correct?
Conservation easement in favor of the town.
So that becomes
And this is the
town
open
property
space.
with no access.
Well, it's
In
an
favor of
easement, it's
the
an
town.
easement.
Where the town can go on.
Yeah. And then this is the drainage easement. And this is his property. So
But
here and
there's no
here is,
access to this.
it comes down here on the road.
Basically, the shed was put in illegal with no building permit, and no zoning permit. They
No,
blocked it.
there was a building permit.
How can they put it on not your
Well,
property?
whoever the inspector was, it wasn't Dan, but whoever was the inspector at the time.
What, it had to be
signed
submitted,
off on
it had to be submitted, it had to be submitted through building, had to go to the building department.
Well,
They want Clutch and Cloder Farms.
what I'm telling you is I pulled the permit. I spoke to whomever was in that office. And they said that because of the statute of limitations, the town couldn't enforce it.
Now, but now, if they wanna sell their property, that shed would have to go. It's not,
They're not going in.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
So I guess the bottom line is that the access road is there, it's not gonna get changed. It's not open space that was deeded to the town, it's our land still. We want a small amount to be given to the key, not given, sold to the key. The conservation easement is preserved, the drainage easement is preserved. I don't think it's a radical ask. A radical ask, I guess, was the original request, which was to move all of it to the Keys. I don't think it's still radical, but, okay, so we modified it. And really, we're looking for some guidance about what, if there's something that we're missing. I understand the comment about precedent, but every application that comes before you, you might put conditions on it, you might say, hey, this would be okay if you do X, Y, and Z, or you might flat out say it's not okay. But I would think there's a particular reason, it's gonna encroach on neighbors, it's gonna cause noise, it's gonna affect X, Y, and Z, it's gonna impact drainage, but I mean, the issue of precedent, I'm sure you've given, I guess I'm missing what the real issue is that might harm another part of the town.
My concern is the fact that road was cut in, the town paid to cut that gravel drive, lack of a better word, the town paid to put that in, and now someone else owns it, even though we have the easement, are we gonna have troubles as the town accessing it? Are we gonna have another problem where we can cut some trees back to trigger it? You were upset last time when the town came to do something on their land. Is the town going to be upset the next time they can even do something on the easement to access it?
The trees that are in question, when the town cut this was all trees right here.
Is that town land?
All the way up.
It's Metal's farm.
It's easement, correct?
It's Well, we say easement land, it's accessible by the town if necessary, but it's the property of Meadow Farms. It's not town property. It's not town property. It's a gravel pathway it's twice this area here, just to be clear.
Okay.
I walked it, it's covered with weeds. It's not a road. If the town wants to get in there, they still can get in there. Nobody's building any blockage from that. So the idea, an easement is a legal entity. Again, I'm not the zoning expert, but nothing's going to change. The easement is still going to be there. Just like if you had an Eversource easement, right, for power utility lines, whomever owns the land still has to let Eversource get on it. Same thing here. The town is still gonna get on it.
One thing, has the town attorney looked at this?
Yes, we've talked to the town attorney about it.
Cause it seems to me part of it is a legal question on, what the approval means and what can and can't be done.
So his bottom line was that he didn't recommend it. And we did talk to the town attorney about the transfer in terms of the whole portion and in terms of carving the excess. And he, he kind of cautioned that what was approved is the amount that was approved, because I had taken the current regulations, say 20%, and so there's just about an acre difference between, in excess. And so there was that, okay, maybe there's a sliver there. And so that, that's where these folks have landed with how can they and should they? But the town attorney's, his recommendation was not to pursue it just because it would set that precedent.
Then whenever there's excess, somebody can resell it.
Well, one of the scenarios also was pointed out was like, okay, what if a developer now comes back to us and says, that open space that was set aside over there, now I want to pay the fee in lieu of, and I want to build in that open space. That's the same thing. It's renegotiating the terms and conditions.
Yep.
And that's, so regardless, I'm not looking at this at all. I'm looking at the principle of, do we want to open up and renegotiate approved site plans? Or terms and conditions of a subdivision?
And subdivisions probably have excess.
Well, from what I read from the original minutes, the excess was created because the way they calculated it with all these tiny little slivers.
Because they got little lots.
The commission said there has to be a contiguous piece that is a benefit to someone. And that's why the excess was created, because the way that it was calculated. They said they wanted a contiguous piece. So it had some benefit.
It was a trade.
Versus all the slivers between every other house and everything like that. That's why.
So it's not really excess.
That's why it was created that way.
So to take away the precedent that we would be setting, if it was written in the deed or contract, that the land that is purchased, absolutely nothing can be built on it. And it's basically still as open space, as a precedence, as your example was that the open space gets deeded to somebody else and then they build on the property. That's not the case here. We're strictly purchasing open space, and that open space remains as open space with all existing easements in place.
Okay, well, I mean, we're not here to decide if you can or cannot do this here. We're here to decide as to, would we even consider it as, an appropriate thing to come before us? So I'll just take a straw for it. Who's in favor of, entertaining a renegotiation of a approved subdivision?
Hate to say it, but,
All right, so there's no guidance as to what we could do to make it different, because the alternative here is, I have to now go to court, and both of us are gonna spend a lot of money to resolve this, when it's really a relatively small transaction. I don't know why the attorney said that, but it just seems like you made, it seems like I don't understand how the workings always work, but there are always opportunities to come before and make a decision about whether you do a variance or not. And I'm a little perplexed as to why it'd be better for us to sue each other in court versus just transfer some land. We have a very small amount of land that nobody uses. Nobody uses it.
You have another alternative,
What is it?
move the shed,
And all those mature trees have to go down.
it avoids a lawsuit.
No, that's not my call, it's their call.
I know, but there is another alternative.
Yeah, but I just, okay, but
Right.
In my opinion.
What's that?
In my opinion, I don't see why the trees would have to come down, they would just be on the open, public land.
again, I guess I would feel the same way about why, part of, I would assume this commission's work is things like variances, and I'm not really sure.
You can't offer variances
No,
anymore.
there's no variances
No more.
allowed at all.
Or, okay, or what about, should making sure that rules are enforced? Those would also be part of your.
There's a separate enforcement officer that doesn't sit on this commission.
Yeah.
Variance stopped like what, Ruth, like 6-7 years ago? Got that big lawsuit from somebody, from place, and no more variances.
Variances to the regulations.
Right.
Like waivers.
Waivers.
Right.
Yeah, they have to be written in the regs. The waivers have to be.
We used to be able to grant them here. We can't do that anymore.
All right, so there's nothing that would help us here.
Not that we can offer you.
And you've not modified any other situation where, someone comes to you and resolve
Not myself, sitting as chairman, I am not.
As one of the individuals on the commission said last time, this is unprecedented, this is uncharted territory. We're not here to, make this precedent, open up all these other cases. We're merely asking to purchase a small slice of land.
I mean, I know you guys are a straw poll, but what I heard was that in, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, you had one, which was this year, before our discussion. One. It just doesn't seem like a flood is gonna start coming. You've had one in, I haven't heard any other example.
I just want to interject as well. At the last meeting, one of the board members said, our goal is to really help the Kitas with an accommodation to a path in moving forward. And so that is when we were given the direction to do our due diligence, which we've spent a lot of time working with the association to do our due diligence. And after spending many meetings and listening to our community talk about chickens and all these other issues that we have in the community, I think asking for a small piece of land that would, I just.
Between two private homeowners.
Exactly.
So when a town attorney said it's not a good idea,
But based on what information of just saying it's not a good idea? Well, based on what though? Precedent?
Ruth's quick conversation that she had with the attorney. The attorney doesn't know the facts, doesn't know anything really, just other than what Ruth explained to
So
him.
I wouldn't have given him the information
I
that I
know.
know. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I gave him all the information. I know.
So
I mean, so the attorney didn't say, so just to be clear here, if you're judging this based on what the attorney said, the attorney, it was coming differently, Bruce. The attorney didn't say, hey, that's illegal, that's somehow against regulations or something, the attorney said, oh, wow, it would be not setting good precedent. Correct?
That's correct. We'd have to open up a contract, the approval with the conditions of approval, and open up this, we required a certain amount of open space. It's not recommended. The same, when we try, someone wanted to purchase or be gifted, open space with the town owned, but it was created as part of the subdivision approval, and so it triggers the whole issue. And it was a bad precedent to set. The commission gave a negative referral on it. And so this is
Are you referring
nothing
to,
of the same thing.
well, I don't know what the other situation was. Were they trying to build on that land?
No.
No.
It had drainage easements just like this, very similar. The difference is the town owns that parcel. And in this case, the homeowners association owns the parcel.
So the other was the town owning the parcel?
Yeah.
This,
So it's
So
the
private-
opening up, it's the opening up of an approval. And modifying that. And if there's an agreement on what open space was to be preserved. And now you're going back on that. That's what's happening. Like the attorney is looking at the facts against the law and, you know, just prudence from a legal perspective. And I would, you know, I understand that there's different rungs on the ladder and what you're looking at and the lens you're looking through and your goals are very different from the goals the attorney is looking at on behalf of the town.
right, but this group here, I thought I heard that the goal was to try to find a reasonable accommodation. And I think we found it's two private transactions, not the town selling land to a homeowner, which sounds like the previous one was. So I understand that you guys, that there's an issue with precedent, but just not having two homeowners execute a transaction that literally affects no one else. There are no neighbors around this land. There's a train track, there's more open, as I understand it. In fact, I think I wasn't here for the last meeting. My understanding is there was some kind of discussion about these guys purchasing land across from the railroad track. Well, no?
It was made suggestion to me to swap open space. If I wanted to buy an acre here, then I have to match it with adjoining property, which is technically on the other side of the railroad tracks. But the state and the railroad tracks own those railroad tracks, so there really is no abutting space. Because there's 22 acres or 27 acres that wasn't for sale on the other side of the railroad tracks.
Anyways, is there any chance that you guys will give us some direction that would allow us to execute something?
Doesn't seem that there is any advice we can give you.
Absolutely no accommodations that the board said they could give us between two private owners, and falling short now because the lawyer in the town doesn't want to open up prior books.
Well, it doesn't want to set precedent.
Set precedents.
That's only happened once in anybody's recorded memory.
And they don't want to.
We didn't approve that one either.
And that is the precedent at this point. And, I mean, I think it would be ill-advised for us to act against the advice of counsel.
With respect, counsel that's not here to explain the things is, and a decision made without any understanding about what their facts are. I just, I feel like that's not a service to taxpayers.
I was present for that phone call and I believe he did have a good understanding of what was being asked.
Yeah, all right, well, I just want to say that I feel like the spirit of trying to assist taxpayers I can't think of a more harmless transaction is really unfortunate.
And then unfortunately, we have to not just look at this, we have to look at how this affects
That would imply that you don't have the ability to look at other cases and make a yes or no decision, which is what you're tasked to do. And that doesn't reflect well, honestly, it doesn't reflect well.
Well, it kind of all started by you putting the shed on, not on your property. This is why we're here.
But
So
whatever
let's,
the reason is, the kids want more privacy. We're willing to give them a little small sliver of land. And again, for a precedent that isn't even actually something that's happened, it's not like you get 10 of these and you have to say no to 10 of them every year. It's just, again, we're trying to resolve this between two private taxpayers. There's no effect. It just seems, is that, I don't know if that's the spirit of
I
actual.
Time's out. I think the precedence here, and I speak to members of our East Windsor and Broadbrook community. I think the precedence here is demonstrating to our other members of the community how two neighbors can work together with a zoning board to come up with a reasonable agreement. I think we are setting an example for other members of our community of this is how it's done. This is how two neighbors talk to one another. This is how neighbors work, taxpayers in the community work together to resolve an issue. That's what I think. We are setting the precedent. That's all I have to say.
And for you, sir, the shed actually had nothing to do with it. What happened was my wife and I approached the board because of people trespassing, walking in our backyard. My wife and I set a meeting with the board. Michael Fitchman, who was the board member, pulled out a map and he said to me, "Did you know your shed was encroaching on our land?" I said, "No, I didn't. I didn't. Not until that time, not until that meeting we had." And the meeting, at that first meeting, was about purchasing the land that I had with Paul and the other board members. So just for the record, the shed had nothing to do with it.
And just for the record, when the town came in to remove those trees, they did not mark property lines whatsoever. And I do have photographs on my phone that show that they came over the property markers that they put in after they removed trees. And after they removed trees that were on our property line. There was no
significant number of
staking.
trees
They
were
did
removed
not
on our
stake
property line.
the property when they came into the remove. Furthermore, when we purchased the house, and you are correct, the shed was incorrectly placed. When they were working to start developing to put in this road, I don't know if it was on my actual property. I don't know zoning people, who they were, but I'm in the privacy of my own home with my small children. And I look out my bedroom window and I see strangers in front of my shed pointing here, there, and everywhere. I opened the window to inquire and they said they needed to get back here before it was even a ditch. It was all brush. They were trying to take measurement, but they couldn't access it from over here because this was all brush, woods, thicket, and the only way to access it was to march through my front area and come right back here. No one asked me permission. They took the liberties to do that. So when we are talking about precedence, we are talking about respect, and we are talking about community. I will tell you, we had none of that when it was okay for the town to put in this road. You walked right through my property. I was a new homeowner with small children, coming from an environment that was a very hostile, abusive neighborhood. It was unsafe. I wanted to move out of there so my children could be safe. And I move in, and the next thing I know, on several occasions, I have people walking here.
Ma'am, how is this pertaining to what this commission can do? To what this commission can do right now? Can we undo any of that?
You
We
can't,
cannot.
you
So,
can't. But
please.
what I want you to understand is flexibility.
Okay, we've already taken a vote.
And you've already come up with your.
And we have other items on our agenda that we'd like to get to.
I only heard one vote, by the way.
I actually did anyone.
Jim was the only one that said no.
Okay.
So I'd like to, I know a vote.
No.
Who says no?
No,
No,
thank you.
Then we will work with Meadow Farms.
So obviously, you lied. You lied to me. You lied to me last meeting. What you can do for the Kitas, it's absolutely, as an accommodation is nothing. You lied. So, thank you. I'm very, very disappointed.
My question is this. We can measure out the space for the shed. And if we have an agreement with the HOA, can we purchase? How much square footage could it possibly be to accommodate 4 trees and a small portion of shed? Can we try to work out an agreement for a small parcel of land that would cut through the backyard, or is your answer no? Because it makes precedent.
You want my personal opinion? What you're asking for doesn't matter. What matters is that we're renegotiating what's already been approved as a subdivision.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter what you're asking.
Okay.
It's renegotiating a subdivision that we have the issue with.
I'm gonna, pardon me, interrupt you real quick. Sorry to tell you like this, but the building is going to be closing, so we're gonna have to kind of end this pretty soon.
We have 2 items left on our agenda. It shouldn't be very long at all.
Yeah, just letting you know.
Thank you.
You get overtime tonight.
All right, so under correspondence, we have the Connecticut Federation of Planning and Zoning Agencies quarterly newsletter. Everybody got a copy of that in their packet? So, I guess, are there any highlights that you need to bring to our attention? And we can all,
The only question I had, and maybe it's for Mike, the regulation of short-term rentals. I thought I understood, and maybe I didn't understand correctly, that the Airbnbs were not allowed in East Windsor. Does this mean they are?
So this is,
Did a state Supreme Court?
so I think that
decision?
this was,
Oh, it's a public
let's see.
act.
Superior Court case. I don't think it's an appellate court case, so it needs to be an appellate or Supreme Court case for other towns to be informed by the decision. I don't know that this was. And a lot of it comes down to how single-family residential uses are regulated in the specific zoning regulations of the municipality and how that's defined from the stance that the community is taking on short-term rentals. So lots of people are watching this case, but
So it
this is
isn't
not like
decided yet.
hasn't done an earth-shattering. There's 2 cases that people are watching, this one and there's a recent case out of New Jersey, which a judge found age restrictions for like elderly housing to be illegal and completely tossed the idea out in state. So people are watching that here, but we're not at the point where it's informing what communities have to start doing. Which short-term or age? Yeah.
hey, any other questions? No. The other correspondence we have is a letter from Robinson and Cole. I'm terrible with names.
Are we getting sued again?
It's the water tower
Oh,
across there too. Yeah, could change an answer.
we can't do a thing about that anyways.
Just to notify us that they're changing an antenna on the water tower. Is there nothing else for a business meeting? We have no need for an executive session, so does anyone have anything else they'd like to bring up or discuss? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Dave?
I'll make a motion
to adjourn meeting tonight, need the number,
That's,
number 1877.
we have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
Call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Meeting is adjourned at 9:32.